welcome to the Storypath Ultra panel, where we're going to talk about Storypath Ultra core manual. We're going to talk about Storypath Ultra as a system. We're going to talk about licensing, just anything related to the Storypath Ultra stuff we're working on. I am Eddy Webb. My pronouns are he, him. And as relevant to this conversation, I was the lead writer on the Storypath manual, but I'll get into how that came about in a minute. And also, I've been kind of acting as the main stakeholder for the Storypath Ultra system to make sure that as different games get worked on, that there's some continuity and cohesion between them. I'll introduce all my colleagues here. Hiromi, why don't you go ahead and start?
I want the Hiromi, I mean. Hi, I'm Hiromi. I am a writer, developer, designer for 147 books and games. I'm also the line developer for Scion. And I made the Guardians of the Dying world for Storypath Ultra and some other good stuff. So, yeah, that.
Yes.
I don't have mine yet. I'm going to order it this month later.
Well, since you're talking, Michele, how about you? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Michele Masala. I'm a writer, RPG freelancer, mostly for Onyx. I've worked on a lot of their lines, and when it comes to Ultra, I've worked on a lot of the World Below and At the Gates. I wrote the space opera chapter when it comes to the Ultra Core, and as we just revealed, yes, I'm also one of the developers of Scion 3, which is going to be in Ultra, so that's also a thing. Yes, Galaxy Vortex Prime, that's my baby with all its aliens and all its weirdness. Thanks, Hiromi.
Awesome. Excellent. And then finally, Travis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Travis. My pronouns are he and they. When I'm not running games, I am writing them. As far as Ultra goes, I have done a couple of tasty bits for the Ultra core, so the Massive Monsters and Dangerous Environs, which just came out last month. Tasty bits I did. I worked on The World Below quite a bit. I've worked on, I did a couple Curseborn tasty bits, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but that is mostly my Ultra work. I have some fun Ultra stuff I'll be announcing here momentarily as well. And yeah, I've been writing, developing for Onyx Path for some time now. So happy to be here.
Excellent. Kind of start at the high level. If you probably know what Storypath Ultra is if you're watching this panel, but just in case, Storypath Ultra is our in-house core rule system for many of the Onyx Path games. It is a variation on our existing Storypath system. It's not a new addition necessarily. It is just a refinement. Many years of working on the Storypath games, we found ways that we can make things clearer, we can refine things, and also just try some new tactics. And so that's where kind of Ultra came from. We nailed down the initial directions we wanted to go Ultra in, and then we brought in Daniel Lazon, who was kind of the lead designer to try to bring Storypath into where we wanted Ultra to go. And then we started making some games with Storypath Ultra. In the course of doing that, we learned a couple of things. I believe the first couple of games we did Steam Wars, we did The World Below, we did At the Gates, and I believe we were doing Curseborn. So we had 4 games with Storypath Ultra. Not quite simultaneously, but relatively close to each other, where all of them were working just from the original system design document that I had pulled together. And so even in the course of making those 4 different games, we learned bits and pieces and ways to kind of clarify Storypath Ultra. And so my goal was to kind of pull all of that together and to do something we hadn't done before at Onyx Path, which is to have a settingless system book. And I'm the lead writer on that, but that's kind of in air quotes because really I was taking a lot of existing material, compiling it, consolidating it, and then making sure that it all kind of flowed. And then from there, I wrote material to kind of extrapolate from that, to make sure that a lot of the design assumptions we had with Ultra were actually written down on the page somewhere, because the ultimate goal was then, this is a book we're going to give to future designers and say, hey, you're making a Storypath Ultra game. Here's our design document functionally that you can work from. And so when we wanted to do that, we knew that we wanted to have some settings in the back of the book. And so we did, I wrote one, which I'll talk about later if we have time. But we crowdfunded a vote for what the other two settings would be. And one of the crowdfunding votes was giant monsters in space. And I thought, Michele loves space opera. Yes, mine is pinfalls and space body slams from hell. But I will talk about myself in a minute, but I want to let Michele talk first, because I picked someone who very vocally does not watch a lot of science fiction to pick the science fiction chapter.
I like space opera, but I don't watch a lot of that. I know. Right.
And that's actually why I wanted to reach out to you, is because like you do like space opera, but you don't watch a lot of the commonly known space opera shows. And so I was hoping you would do like what you did, which is bring a different spin and perspective on what space opera could be, because like, everyone can, if you say, hey, I want to do a Star Trek game, you don't need to do a generic Star Trek game in back of a book. People can figure that out for themselves. I want to give them a little more interest. And so let's talk about what you did with your setting.
So yes, I was the pitch itself. The one that won the vote was a weird galaxy, focused on exploration and on a spaceship of humans being stranded there. There was some lost in space in there, I guess, some of that stuff, and so I went weird. And so I have these these generational ships made by a group of humans being stranded in this sort of primordial galaxy, which is the point from everything else in the Big Bang came through. And it was fun. I won't lie. I had sort of made a embryonal space opera setting when I was in high school, and there are a lot of the creatures that are there come from that. Not all of them, but a lot come from that. Like the robots who absorbed and improved on the ancient Rome culture, and so I figured giant robot warriors in togas and going like very victis and conquering everything, which is a fun spin on the killer machines. I think. Yes. Robot romance are worse than mindless robot, if I can say that as an Italian person, to be honest. And also there are, I'm in love with the Xergo, which are sort of going to spindly, sort of classic space invaders, not unlike those from The Destroy of Humans or from 50 sci-fi. And I made them the terror. There are villainous or sort of more antagonistic cultures in there. You can play all the aliens I put in there. There's a lot. There's some cover your standard archetypes. There are some antagonistic ones, but the Xergo are the only ones that I go out there and say, you can play as a single individual for that, but they are bad. They are going to nuke your whole planet and destroy everything in there. So it was fun. I made... I think Eddy also picked me for that because I'm one of the most infamous Onyx fans of kaiju and giant monsters. So I made the system for giant monsters in there, which I think Travis built upon in the tasty bit about giant enemies and the like. So that was fun. And I do love world building. So I think I had fun putting all the elements together, and as a designer, also creating the psionic powers that everyone uses in there. Also working on the ships, on the rules for space, for the vacuum. It was a lot of fun, and I steer clear from any space opera sources while I was working on that, because I didn't want it to influence me much in any sense. picked up Stellaris after, and I was really scared because I said I went kitchen sink, and this is something that it's very much in there. People are going to believe I stole from this. It didn't happen. I think I just went from some very classic archetypes the fish people that are sort of telepathic, the star people, the crystalline people, like people a bit of even Steven Universe inspiration. I won't deny that. There's small fluffy people, not unlike the Yordle from League of Legends, or that tinker with stuff, and or even just Rocket Raccoon. I wanted that to be there, and they are in there, and I think the Tasty Beat was announced, so Eddy gave me the opportunity to expand a bit more on all the alien cultures in an upcoming Tasty Beat, and so I had I could have written a whole book about that, but with this opportunity that I didn't expect, I had the chance to go over each of them and give them more options each. There's an example of a ship for everyone, and some more stuff, be weapons or other stuff they can get. It was very fun.
Yeah, that's actually a good point I didn't mention is a lot of times when we have freelancers working on Onyx Path books, usually they will inherit from us, here's what the game is, here's what we need it to be. And a lot of times they have a chance to space to put their extra material onto it, but usually the core of what the game is been delivered. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to both of you, is because it was a unique opportunity to be able to say, I have a 2-sentence pitch and a word count to fill. I need you to check off these things, go. So yeah, like you said, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, none of that was me or even anyone else path going, Michele, you need to have fish people with telepathic powers in here. It's very much your unique setting.
Yeah, we sort of make all of the free. We all did a small game in there, and I think it's really cool. Hiromi and I had like free reign and your complete trust. That we do our thing in there, which is something really. I don't think I've expressed my appreciation enough for that. It was an act of trust, which was really nice on your part, and so thanks for that.
No other problem. I mean, I
really appreciate that too.
Well, I mean, that's one reason why I reached out to both of you, because I knew you were both really creative and also really good at delivering and communicating, which are all very key things for something like this. And actually, Hiromi, that's one of the reasons why I know I reached out to you about the fantasy setting, is because I know that you've been pretty vocal about not all fantasy settings need to be just D&D with different dress. So, and I definitely wanted that, because again, like it's especially with all the Earthbane games, like I wanted something that's not D&D and also not like the other Earthbane games. But luckily, the pitch that came back was very much, I think it was like wizards battling in a post-apocalyptic world. So already we're starting from a pretty distinctive perspective. Oh, yeah. So yeah, talk a little bit about kind of how you rolled with that.
So with Guardians of the Dying World, like I inherited the bit about it's a dying world. And instead of strictly post-apocalyptic, we put it like mid-apocalypse, where the idea is that the world is, or at least was, highly magitechnically advanced, where like people are using magic and like summoning elementals to like wash their dishes and to like pilot their conveyances to go to work, and like they're used to using all of this magic, and then all of a sudden the humans in the setting and the revenants, who are like they're not zombies, they're sapient, but they're very undead. The two of them decided, well, we don't like each other. Let's just summon the biggest elementals the world has ever seen. And then they burned out a huge chunk of the arcana that the world relied on. So now magic is extremely scarce. It's a dying resource. It's running short. And oh, hey, people used to use that to create food, and now they have to deal with other stuff. So I, right off the bat, was like, Humans are unplayable because they're all dead.
Mhm.
I'm taking that off the table immediately. And now I'm going to find fantasy races that are going to be fun and unique to the setting. And one of them is the Sangu, who are coral people. They are living, walking, talking coral colonies, and they they have their own sort of understanding of the world. They see things differently because they have eyes all over their body.
Mhm.
And I also was like, I I want to have sort of like a group of people who are like more combat oriented, but like not necessarily focused on it, just that like it's an option, much like elves get stereotyped as
Mhm.
wizards. The Rancorists, who are my tiger people, they are more combat focused because they're cats, and thus they have predator drive, which is both a power in the game and also a real thing that exists in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they're cats, they're like, yeah, that guy's running. I want to chase him.
I'm gonna get you. Awesome.
And also have skyfolk who are uh, human-sized hawks, and they are super fun, as well as fae, who are your pixies, fairies, and all that good stuff. About like 3 foot tall, so like I don't have dwarves in this setting, but what I do have are fairies, who are about that size and are very playful. And they have a more natural connection to Arcana, to
Mhm.
the point where like they need to consume Arcana, otherwise they start withering away and taking damage. Um, the the plus side is they get more Arcana as a stat. The downside is they have to use it.
Right.
Uh, and so the whole like premise of the setting is that you need to find an alternate source of energy for the world. Uh, hey, there's a message in here somewhere.
Subtle.
Subtle. It's so subtle. Mike stole
not,
it right
not,
under the
not
radar.
tropical at all. Not topical.
Magic can absolutely be fixed. There are ways for you to fix it, presented in the the story guide section, and it's left open. So, like, there are 4 city-states that are still large, populated, and doing stuff, and each one of them has their own theory about how they can restore magic to the world.
Mhm.
And any of them could be correct. They could all be correct. It's a matter of which ones do you put resources into in order to enact. And by the way, there's also the issue of, hey, people are going to starve without magic. How do you feed them in a world where people don't really know how to farm yet? They have ideas, there are books, and they're going to do something about it, which is what a tasty bit that I'm working on is all about. But that's in development. So, like, hey, I'm not going to talk about it too much.
It's coming. But yeah, so one of the things I actually loved about your setting was, like you said, you really hit that mid-apocalypse vibe, because it's actually having worked on a couple of post-apocalyptic games now. I won't say it's easy, but like there's a certain kind of set of conceits that come with it. Resources are minimal, and you can have to scrape to get by, and there's a lot about resource management is usually the design. But because of how you structured it, I love the mid-apocalypse vibe of we are, whether we like it or not, ultimately responsible for what's happening to this world. not in a we're evil way, but in a it's inevitable consequence of the things that are driving us way. Like, I want to feed my people that I live with, but it means I have to take a resource from somebody else who needs it. And so it's a very subtle way of doing some very complicated role play in a small space, which is one of the things I loved about doing these little short chapters of settings, is because it at least for me, it caused a design tension to kind of make these things as concise as possible and open up some really interesting spaces. And I definitely saw that in your chapter.
Awesome. Thank you.
Aside from the core manual, one of the things that we're doing now that is out is that people can now start making their own games that use a Storypath Ultra system. And there's a few different ways we can do that. And so, Travis, maybe you kind of start talking about how that works, and then also talk about something you're working on that's related to that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So when we crowdfunded Storypath Ultra, one of the things that one of the stretch goals that we included was the Storypath Ultra third-party license. And the text on that is just being like, the final tweaks are basically being applied as we speak. Right. But that will be very, very soon out for people to take a look at, and then start to work toward implementing. And then the other side of that is SPU over on the Storypath Nexus, which once again, we just want to make sure we have all the language finalized, and then we'll be able to pull the trigger on those things. So watch for them extremely soon. But to break down the difference for you, the SPU license, where you license it as a third-party publisher for use with your IP, the way that's going to work basically is you will state your intent and pitch what you want to make to OnyxPath. If OnyxPath agrees and you agree to the licensing terms, you will be able to go make your Storypath Ultra book using the Storypath Ultra system. OnyxPath will collect a nominal fee, a percentage of what your book is. And there you have it. You will retain all ownership of your IP. You're licensing the system for use. You can kickstart it, crowdfund it, put it out, put it on Amazon, whatever you want to do. You just need to make sure that you're tracking the sales amounts so that OnyxPath can collect their percentage. With the Storypath Nexus, if you create new IP for the Storypath Nexus version, that IP you will transfer ownership of that IP to OnyxPath, just like anything else you put on the Nexus. If you are doing something for the world below on the Nexus and you make up a new settlement, OnyxPath owns that settlement. That's how that works with community content. So that's the one thing about that. You can create system neutral content as soon as that goes live there as well, and you can create stuff that would fall in with, like, for example, the settings that are in the Storypath Ultra core manual. So if you wanted to do, an expansion for Guardians of Dying World, if you wanted to do an expansion for Galaxy Vortex Prime, if you wanted to do something that would tie into, the Pinfall from Grace Body Slams from Hell. I got it right?
Good job. Excellent.
Thank you.
Well done.
Super confused by it, but it's awesome. So if you wanted to make a bunch of wrestlers for that, you can do that on the Nexus.
You should.
You should. Yes, absolutely. The moment it goes live. So again, once that language is all completely sorted out, those things will be available. I have set up that I will be doing with my company, Aegis Studios. We will be doing the first SPU licensed setting for the third-party publisher. I have a setting that I'm pleased to announce called Stomping Grounds. Stomping Grounds is a setting in which, until very recently, it was the world outside your window. And then 6 months ago, everything changed. Giants suddenly appeared randomly around the globe, or at least seemingly randomly. And while these giants did not adhere to any one sort of mythology or fantasy, they are vaguely humanoid. Though they tend to have like bluish and grayish skin. They speak in some strange language that nobody has as of yet been able to decipher. And they cause, they're in a sense, radioactive. They cause interference with electrical signals. And while various places around the world decided to deal with the giant situation in various ways. The United States of America, which is where the game is set, said, "Oh, those 5 places where giants were spotted, we're going to make a 25-mile circle around it, and you have 24 hours to get out. And then it's a no man's land, and we will just shoot anything that comes near the border." So you are playing people who have stayed in the quarantine zone, whether it was because, you are a doctor and you're like, I can't leave all these people. Who's going to take care of them? Or you were an average American with an average income and couldn't afford to just leave your home, couldn't afford to get out. And so you're living in this area now. Resources are dwindling. There are these bizarre alien giant creatures moving around that you can't really communicate with. And all you have is each other to rely on. And one of the things that I'm really hanging a lot of the design and the gameplay of this setting on is the bond mechanic. And the fact that with bonds, you can overcome advantage. These giants are all going to have advantage over you in every respect. So it's really important for you and your group to be able to work together, but also to maintain your bonds. And what happens if you think that the giants should be communicated with, but your buddy thinks they need to be destroyed, but your other buddy thinks, no, we just need to stay out of their way. And how those dynamics can start to erode those bonds, and what happens when, your survival starts getting in the way of just playing nice with one another. What happens when people stop being polite and start being real, and there's giants stepping on you.
It sounds a bit like Escape from New York meets Attack on Titan, honestly, which sounds very cool.
A little bit, yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool.
Not a bad combination.
One of my friends said
cool.
It's like Attack on Titan, but backwards, and I was like, I haven't seen Attack on Titan. I need to watch it, but that sounds fair based on what I know about it. So yeah, that is the basic idea for Stomping Grounds, and that's going to be a self-contained core book that I'll have more information on as soon as we drop the SPU license stuff, and I get the green light from Rich. I'll be sharing information. I've got some cover art that I'll be sharing soon publicly, and I'm very excited to get rolling on it. So.
Awesome. Yeah. One other thing I want to mention, the difference between the two is if you do go through the Nexus, you just upload it. And again, like Onyx Path has ownership of the IP, but also it just goes up. You don't talk to us. You just, as long as you fit within our guidelines, you can do it. With the license, there's an approval process. So you pitch to us, and then we'll review the outline, the manuscript, just to make sure that the Storypath is being used in a way that we find in line with how we use Storypath stuff, and also make sure your game isn't like about shooting brown people or anything stupid like that. So as long as certain basic, don't be a dick quadrants, but otherwise it's going to be, let's just focus on making sure the game system is recognizable to other games that use SPU.
Yeah. We're not trying to dictate what people's games should be, just outside of those few basic sort of internal approval things.
Right. And then also we mentioned a couple of times, but we do have our Tasty Bit program, which is basically every month we put up a small PDF for $1 American, and it's like a few pages just of different stuff you can do with SPU. Hiromi and Michele mentioned that they each are doing a little Tasty Bit about their adding some more material to respective settings. I've also done one for my wrestling one. We also have things like we mentioned massive monsters, where Travis took the amazing work that Michele did with their monsters, and then kind of also added on, like, what do you do like for like giants specifically, because the giant game, so like kind of stripped that down to mechanics so we could show those and how those interact and interlock. We also have traps, talking more about traps, talking about that environments, unusual and dangerous environments, digging more into area effects. Parallel lives, which is a fun one, which is about talking about different kinds of doppelgangers and parallel universes and meeting yourself. And then I just did a pass on a cybernetics Tasty Bit, which will be coming out a bit later. So going into a bit more about how cybernetics, because we actually haven't done cybernetics specifically in SPU, so it's a chance to kind of dig into what that could look like and how that works. At this point, we can go to Q&A while I talk about the bit I've been avoiding. But so if you have questions about Storypath Ultra, Storypath Ultra Core Manual, about the tasty bits, about any of the games using Storypath Ultra, I will make the caveat that if you have specific rules questions, we may not be able to answer them because we're all very busy working on lots of stuff, and so we may not have the answer right in our brain at the moment. We have to research it and get back to you. So if you're like, on page 47, this thing says this, I don't know what that means. But if you have more general rules questions or just, always curious about how the system generally works, we'll be happy to talk about those.
I do have a generic rules answer that can always be applied, which is read the book and sort it out at your table. That is always that is always a workable answer. What works for y'all? That is
yes. But the third setting in SPU is, as mentioned, it's Pinfall from Grace, Body Slams from Hell. And the reason why it's a long title is because originally it was just Pinfall from Grace, but then Mirthful Mike Cheney, who's also a big wrestling fan, was like, kept calling it Body Slams from Hell, and I'm like, no, it's literally the opposite, Pinfall from Grace. And he's like, you could do both, and I'm like, well, to be fair, it's about angels and demons, so I guess that actually does track. That's why we have the big long title. But the premise is, it is the year 2000. The year 1999 came and went. The Y2K bug was horrifying and happened to overlap because it was double booked with the apocalypse. And so it is 6 months after the world went to hell, and there's actually an invasion by both angels and demons. And in order for them to manage their regular conflict for this dimension, they had to settle on a set of rules that all of humanity could agree is fair and unbiased. And so naturally they chose professional wrestling as their set of rules. So you are literally playing a person who has an angel living inside of them, because angels cannot manifest. They can only work through people. And so you're part angel, part wrestler, wrestling through a Mad Max universe and literally having wrestling matches with demons to try to work your way through this world, and to ultimately, if you defeat 666 demons, then the apocalypse will be averted. So it is a bit silly, and it's by design, because one of the things I also did with that setting specifically was I have a number of sidebars to talk about why I made the decisions I did in there, to kind of more explicitly show, here's how you make a setting. And so it was an example setting of like, it's a little silly, a little out there, but to show you even these odder concepts can be done in SPU, and here's how it breaks down. And then I felt like that leads naturally to the more robust and stronger and more dramatic settings that Michele and Hiromi put together. So that way here's a little lighter one, and then here's ones that feel like they could be a full book on their own, specifically to show you that it could be really substantial, exciting settings, or it can be a silly wrestling game. So that was my intent with that. And then I did a tasty bit, again, slightly silly, for Lucha Libre specifically. But again, I had to put a couple sidebars in. Yes. So you have masks that have magical powers, and it's wonderful.
I think the range that the book shows the way you designed it with 3 different chapters, which are wildly different, it's one of its major strengths for sure.
Yeah, and I'm really glad it worked out the way it did, because one is, like I said, a little more kind of CW action adventure, and then your setting is much more kind of a slightly modern spin on that 50s sci-fi vibe, plus also kaiju hunting, and then you have Hiromi's, which is a political and interesting dramatic setting. So like, yeah, it shows you the diversity of settings without referencing any of the existing games we have. So that was definitely my intent, and I'm glad that y'all can also see that landed the way I envisioned it in my head, which is great. That's one of the reasons why I reached out to 2 of you to help me out with that, because I knew you could bring that home for me. And then yeah, so I guess we don't have any questions yet so far.
There's a couple that have popped up. And if
cool.
If I can address one, there's one aimed at you, I guess, first, Eddie, about whether Pinfall from Grace, Body Slams from Hell is going to be an expanded setting or just within the confines of the book. But I think while that was being asked, you were explaining like how the Lucha Libre Tasty Bit expands on that very setting. Are there other plans to expand on, I guess?
I'm not planning to, because honestly, while I could expand on that, a lot of that expansion would just be here's more demons to wrestle, here's more wrestling belts, or different kinds of wrestling styles, and I do feel like that's something that the Nexus would be a much better use of. So like that's why I did Lucha Libre the way I did, to kind of show you here's an example of how I envision a Nexus product could look, and then let people like here's what Philadelphia looks like in this Y2K world. Here's, what London looks like, whatever. And I think it would be awesome if someone did like, okay, here's Mexico City, here's London, here's Tokyo, to show you the different styles of wrestling and kind of how that overlaps with these quasi-apocalypse. Weird apocalyptic vibe through all the things out there. I noticed that. Anyway. Yeah, so like that's something I felt like the Nexus would have more fun doing.
No.
Can't imagine why we have all these apocalypse. In memory of Anthony Stewart Head, I suddenly see myself needing to know the plural for the word apocalypse. I do see a couple other questions. Can you talk about the mechanics for Storypath Ultra characters to beat a rival with a lot more advantage by working together? Do you want to tackle it, Eddie? Do you want me to tackle it?
Well, I mean, you're the one that introduced the idea of abusing bonds. Or it was bonds to overcome advantage.
Right. So, like, there are very few things that can overcome when you have a disparity in an advantage, and one of them is by spending bond enhancement. So, you have the basic bond mechanics that you develop a certain number of bonds at character creation. In Stomping Grounds, you will have slightly more bond dots to start with, but we also are going to have some subsystems that interact with like how decisions you make in the game might erode your bonds, whether you like it or not, kind of stuff like, because you can piss people off and then it's not good for your cooperation stuff. But basically you spend that bond enhancement to negate the advantage, and as an advantage grants 2 enhancement, spending 2 bond enhancement will let you sort of basically cancel that out, level it up so that you're able to interact meaningfully with it. So that's the short version of how that works. Also, somebody did ask a question about why are they if the giant's the problem, why are they shooting people? Because it is a very thinly veiled metaphor for how terrible the American government is at solving problems.
Again, subtle.
It will mention
subtle.
in the book that other countries are dealing with it in other ways, but because you're stuck inside a quarantine zone where they've killed the internet, they've dropped all cell phone signals. Your only chance of communicating with the outside world is shortwave radio if the weather's right. You're not sure how Canada's dealing with them, so that's kind of the vibe there.
Awesome. Any other questions then? Or
looks like we had, let's say I apply for a third-party SPU license. Is having a publisher account on DriveThruRPG enough to apply in addition to the pitch of the product itself? Or does it need additional legal loops to hop through, for example, having an actual publishing company?
So I can handle that. Basically, we don't need to we don't need you to prove that you have an infrastructure to make these. We're just licensing it to you, right? So when you send a pitch to us, it's going to be like, here's the game I want to make, and we want that pitch to be relatively short. There's actually a great page that's hot linked on the Onyx Path page where I wrote up, here's the kind of thing you see in a pitch. If you go to our contact us page, we have all the stuff about pitching stuff, and there's a link that says, here's our regular pitch. That's what we're looking for. It's, again, it's a relatively short document. Just because we, as Onyx Path, want to spend a few minutes reading that going, yeah, sure, we can do that. Or now the 2 things we're looking for is that going to be a huge problem for us to have Storypath Ultra associated with, which is extremely unlikely, or more concerningly, are you making a game that's going to actually compete with us? And we have 2 very similar games, both with Onyx Path or with Storypath Ultra associated with it. And that might be a different problem.
Right. Yeah,
that's really it.
Yeah, if you pitch like, hey, I got this idea for an urban fantasy game and it's centered around 5 different lineages, we're probably going to say, no, that will pass, thanks.
Right. We've already got that game. But beyond that, like if you sell it on itch.io, if you have a full actual printing company, whatever, that stuff is probably less of a concern. There's a chance we may have some questions about how it's being produced, but it's extremely unlikely because we're busy people. And I mean, the fact Onyx Path is basically 5 hamsters in a trench coat. So I mean, we're not going to throw stones.
Yeah, it's the old adage, like, how do I become a filmmaker? You say, I'm going to make a movie, and then congratulations, boom, you're a filmmaker. Same thing with
right. Or
publishing.
How do you make a large fortune in the game industry? Is start with a even bigger fortune.
Right.
True facts.
Question for Hiromi: what setting would you do for Ultra given the opportunity? Let's open up to everybody. We'll start with Hiromi. What setting would you do with Ultra given the opportunity?
I mean, I kind of had the opportunity, which is to take fantasy and go, we're not doing the same damn thing as Tolkien did 100 years ago. We're going to do something new. But I'm a big cyberpunk girl, so like I'd probably have some fun with cyberpunk. And again, I would probably run it against the grain and do something weird and new, kind of like how we did with Mythic Shards, where we had basically cyberpunk plus kaiju and giant robots, and just sort of went, you know what? You're running a god mecha, and go punch this kaiju, or figure out what the kaiju want and do a diplomacy, because that is an option. That's always an option when I'm in the driver's seat, because I want to provide people with multiple options for success. I don't want people to just do one thing. I want them to be able to do, honestly, infinite things, but I can't write infinite things, so I'll give you like 3 options.
The next closest thing.
Exactly. How about you, Michele? What would you do?
For Ultra, I have been tinkering in my mind with something which is like a cosmic horror done in a sort of a Dead Space thing, when you go out there and encounter stuff in a survival horror. Dead Space meets I don't know. There's Saros that came out right now with Carcosa going on. I'd like to do in space, but not in a sort of space opera version of stuff, but eerie, very cosmic horror-y way. And I think it would be fun to go psionics thing, when which you embrace as you receive eldritch power, which tears you apart, and you mutate in a different sort of entity, and your bond with the forces beyond increases. That's every freelancer, every writer has some ideas. I have others, but right now I think that could be interesting. That could be fun. Having like giant cathedrals dedicated to Cthulhu or someone like that, roaming around an empty space. Alien goes there in its roots, so I think there's also a bunch of that.
Nice, I kind of dig that. That sounds very fun, actually.
It does sound dope.
I never had the chance to to remove my power limiters and do real cosmic horror. I think I would be a lot there.
Yeah, totally. Especially because again, with stuff like the bond system and whatnot, you could take a different, as opposed to quote unquote sanity, which has always been a problematic way of addressing cosmic horror. Doing things more like you're breaking down your way you relate to other people might be a better way of emulating that in a more interesting way. So
yeah. Modern cosmic horror. It's a genre that people on the fringes, like queer people and people in minorities, embraced way more than its creators even deserve. And so they are taking that in that direction, away from sanity, which is always a concept with its problems, and more like into shifting your worldview away. And I think it would be Ultra offers the tools to do something interesting in that sense.
Nice. I love it. We had another question. It's clarification. So making a mini game / setting for SPU in the Nexus is allowed, but becomes Onyx Path property. Is that correct? It's like, yes. If you put something up through the Storypath Nexus, whether it is for one of our existing IPs that are already that are detailed in the Nexus, or if you're making your own game using Storypath, if you don't want to go through the approvals process and go through the process of publishing yourself and having a marketplace and all of that, if you put it just up in the Nexus, then everything in that becomes our property, but you also get a cut. So it's basically just like making a fan game, but you can charge for it. Whereas if you go through a third-party license, there's an approval process, but then if later on we decide to part ways, or you decide I'm done making this, I want to make this IP and do something else with it, that IP is still yours. So as like, for example, with my game Pugmire, I own the intellectual property for that. So I have been able to go off and do unrelated Pugmire things, and I let Rich know just because I like him to be in the loop, but I don't ask him permission. I can do that without asking permission because I own that. That would be the same relationship. Whereas if you upload it to the Nexus, then it's ours, and so it would stay with us. So that is the balance between those two options.
Right. And to further clarify, that is not yet active. That is coming soon.
Yep.
Once that is active, we'll have guidelines and we'll have templates and all that fun stuff. So
right. To reiterate what Travis said earlier, we're finalizing the text on all of this stuff. So it's coming, but we wanted to give you guys knowledge and information ahead of time so you can start making plans. Because despite deadlines tell us we can't just make a game in a day. We can, but be very tired afterwards.
Yeah, you can. It won't be awesome.
I would be very tired afterwards because I'm 50 and old. Okay. Anything else? I mean, I'm always happy to wrap things up early if there's nothing else going on, but I want to make sure people have the opportunity to ask questions while we have all of these awesome people here to ask questions of.
Yeah, by all means. Let's hear some questions about anybody's settings. We are happy to answer mechanical questions, just to the best of our ability, and don't hold it against us if we make a mistake in that answer. Feel free to ask.
Michele, do you want to say something?
Well, if we have a moment, I'll ask a question that I mentioned before going on the panel. But have you all wished Travis an happy birthday today?
I have, but we always do it again. Travis.
Happy birthday, Travis.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Travis is spending the birthday right here taking care of Onyx PuffCon, so you all better appreciate it.
Be nice to him. It's his birthday.
I appreciate the appreciation. Thank you very much.
Other days you're not allowed to be nice to him, but today you have to be nice to him.
No.
364 days you can be really, really, really terrible to me, but on this day.
Right. Exactly. Very important. Thank you, Michele, for bringing it up. That is obviously the most important part of this panel.
The crucial point of Onyx Path Ultra.
And we are definitely not going to attempt to sing happy birthday to him over Zoom because we're each in completely different countries. It's not going to go well with them.
No. Yeah, that's my gift for you, not singing.
Right, exactly. And on top of that, at least one of us has hearing loss, so pitch is just kind of a concept that I'm vaguely acquainted with.
Very much appreciated, everybody. Thank you so much.
Which Storypath setting has the strongest protagonist in a fight? To me, that's either Scion or Aberrant. That's not Ultra, but I'm still happy to answer that question. Well, actually, no, I take it back. I do think that either Steam Wars or Cortex might be, because they have the giant monsters.
Yeah,
they're probably the strongest protagonists because they also have tons of advantage.
Yeah, because in Galaxy Cortex Prime, correct me if I'm wrong, you have single creatures that are effectively large scale units, right?
Yeah.
So that would by far be the most powerful because
But
like,
since
you
we're
can't
here
walk up
and
punch
Scion, yeah, but since Scion 3 is going to be SPU, maybe we talk a little bit about Scion protagonists in third edition. I mean, what are they going to look like?
I mean, once they hit God tier, things are gonna get real weird real fast.
There we go.
Because
we have talked about that. It's very fun, the culture,
Yeah.
but Hiromi and I have discussed that vaguely. And we make plans long term.
oh yeah, yeah. I have mechanical systems in my head and in my notes that are not gonna get written for years. But like at God tier, with it in second edition, gods just beat mortals. Mortals don't get to do anything because that's not how mythic works. Like
Right.
mortals don't go up to gods and slap them around with a wet fish. Like no.
Similar, there's some notes in a Word document somewhere that we'll look at in like 3 to 5 years. But I'm sure once we get around to properly doing Outsiders and Curseborn, there'll probably be similar vibes of like, yeah, you don't tell he who sits beyond to go roll dice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, to compare it to like an aberrant thing, you know, you got Divismal who has to actively concentrate to be able to interact with mere mortals on a meaningful level. Because if he doesn't effectively pseudo dorm down, he's too awesome to behold. You know, things like that.
And Max just can't have a conversation without time dropping 3 times, so it's a whole separate problem.
Right, exactly.
No, characters in Travis mentioned that, but now that I think of it, in Galaxy Vortex Prime, you get a lot of goodies and powers that go big if you have, especially if you have the power reserves to go let all your psionics go full Tetsuo in Akira. So they are fairly strong, yes. I don't know why, but I always saw them in their little bubble, but compared to others, they have a lot. They have their edges, they have their psionic powers, the Asper powers, so they're pretty strong, yes. Nice. I guess makes sense when you face giant monsters that eat planets, I guess. So yeah.
Right, yeah. It helps if you do something about that, as opposed to just going, oh no, they ate the planet again. Another question is anything you could say about how much we can sort of break SPU for Nexus or license projects? As a random example, if we had a game where rated paths or no paths were a thing, would that be doable, or moving enhancement limits, etc.? Yes. We'll have more concrete guidance when we finish the license agreements, but there is a sidebar in the Storypath Ultra core manual which talks about what changes, what can change, and what always changes. And so that's a pretty good idea of like going, these are things that you don't change, that don't change. Like, for example, the game will always have paths. The skills and attributes will always work the same way. And then, whether you have edges or not is debatable. And then after that, you have fully bespoke settings. So like there is a sidebar that specifically spells out those 3 layers of what you can adjust. And the guidance that we'll have in license is going to be a derivation of that sidebar. So if you read the sidebar, that will give you a pretty good indication of how we're kind of balancing that.
Also, spinning off of that same question, if we had a game where, like, with rated paths, oh, you want a game with rated paths, do you?
Gee, I wonder if there's going to be
Scion 3rd edition.
Right, exactly. Question with apologies, Jim Dresden. How would you do a Dresden Files setting for Ultra? I will say, I have been reading Rivers of London actually recently, which I find to be a more compelling version of the same idea, because without going too much into people, I used to be a huge Dresden Files fan. The last half dozen books have really made me uncomfortable with where that series went, both as a character and as a writer. So I didn't want to support that anymore, but Rivers of London is kind of the same modern day investigator doing weird, creepy stuff. But all of that said, that's kind of Curseborn, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of what I would do in that kind of game, we're basically doing in Curseborn. So
I was thinking the same. Yeah.
You just play a sorcerer in Curseborn, and that's 95% there. I mean, there's a couple things you could tweak, and the core manual can certainly give you a lot of advice to find ways to help tweak that. But at the end of the day, yeah, Curseborn does a lot of that.
Speaking of places that I've seen Curseborn in media recently, I'm just bringing this up a lot strictly because I'm a fan of it and I want more people to watch it. But Widow's Bay is. I'm not sure they haven't been stealing like our hard drives to make Widow's Bay. It is.
You were the third person to recommend that show to me.
It's Twin Peaks meets Parks and Rec in every good way you can imagine.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that. I've been waiting for that to arrive around here a lot.
Yeah, it's.
I
guess I have to watch it.
Is that on Apple?
On Apple TV, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
we
amazing.
do get that. Because the UK is kind of weird in the sense that we get like 85% of things that are on streaming, but sometimes it's on a different streaming package. Sometimes you don't get it at all.
Yeah.
Like if it's on Peacock, God knows if we have it and where it's at. But like Disney Plus, Apple, those generally work the same. But we also have like BBC iPlayer, which also has some stuff. So like it's just all over the board. So every time someone's like, "You should watch this show," it's like, maybe I can. I don't know.
If you can, you should. It is remarkable, and definitely if you're a fan of Curseborn, it's got the vibes for sure.
Nice. I think we have time for one more question, if it's out there.
Yeah, we just had one here. Which Ultra game is the best for heavily investigative games?
I would say Curseborn, but I don't know if Scion 3 is also going to play in that space or not.
We have a lot in there. I think it covers a different flavor of investigation than Curseborn, but in the classic sense, I think Curseborn is still the closer one. You'd have to say it first right off the bat with an investigation.
Yeah, I would say
that's what I thought. My gut was Scion was probably more like mythically researching information about the world around you, rather than Curseborn's more kind of a noirish, trying to discern the lies from the truth kind of investigation.
Yeah, and Scion gets a lot of powers to bypass stuff, like I demanded for the information to arrive to my divine eyes.
Sherlock Holmes bullshit. Got it.
I've been running the World Below for some time now, and I just crack open the Storypath Ultra core manual whenever we do an investigation, because I think that the stuff that's in there in the advanced investigation chapter is perfect reference.
Yeah, and to be fair, actually, that's an interesting example of how this all kind of came about, because like we had a relatively straightforward investigation system, and then in early playtesting of Curseborn, we realized we needed more nuance there, so that was developed for Curseborn, and then I kind of pulled that back into Storypath Ultra. But it ended up actually what happened was that I kind of wrote them in both places. Like it was Danielle and I both in the heat of it. I was like, I wrote this chunk in for SPU, gave it over to her. She said, cool. And I built on it for Curseborn. I said, cool, there's a couple pieces out there I actually want to put back into SPU. So it was like just trading text back and forth for a few days there. So it kind of developed in both books. But I also, like you said, Travis, like as specifically in a separate chapter that you can expand on. So you don't need to have all the clue tags and the specific nuances of it. If you want to just be like, I go in there, I roll dice, here's the clues I get, how to get to the next scene. That is the default investigation. Every Storypath game has some version of that. And then you can build on that if you want to. And then like that Curseborn tweaks it slightly to be a little more occulty investigation. In fact, a small peek, it was going to come up for the upcoming panel, but Covenant also has another kind of tweak at how we do investigations and a different kind of clue tag that works a slightly different way. So that's one of the nice things about Ultra is that a lot of things are, if you could take a core system and then just, well, I'm adding a tag or a status effect or an area effect, and that works in a slightly different way. It doesn't break anything and allows you to do these new nuanced things without having to reinvent a whole new subsystem and bolt it on with duct tape and baling wire.
Exactly that. Well, and Tom Mir pointed out in the chat, they came from the RPG anthology Candlestick, which is actually the objectively accurate answer. But only if one of your players hops up and does a Tim Curry-esque recreation of their investigation.
Exactly. That is the only way that's the answer.
Yeah.
So cool. We are at time. Once again, thank you, Hiromi. Thank you, Michele. Thank you, Travis, for hanging out with me to talk about the SPU book and just the system in general. Best of luck for all of your respective projects. I'm looking forward to reading all of them. And with that, we'll see you all. I don't know Travis, what's the next panel after this, real quick?
Oh, God, you put me right on the spot, didn't you? Actually, I think
Earthbane, right?
Earthbane, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think Earthbane is next. So enjoy, kids. Stay out of trouble. Hang out. I'm going to raid you over to an actual play in progress, and then come back here in a half hour for the Earthbane panel. See you.
Bye.